Everybody, welcome to Grablives. Thank you for listening. And if you ever get a chance to just subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, leaving comments, this really helps the algorithm for our message to get out, for Grablives to reach certain people. It starts to play a certain role to reach those people that need to hear the greater messages about this mental health crisis that we're dealing with. So if you ever get a chance, please do it. I know it's really hard to press that heart button and press like, but it really enables Grablives to do what it needs to do. And for our disclaimer, everything we say and do does not reflect the City of Los Angeles Fire Department. Now that I've said that, our sponsor and our team member, Frontline Behavioral Wellness, they're helping support the audio and the for even this episode to get on the platform and to be sent out to Spotify and Apple. So, their facility is really beneficial and helpful. So if you ever get a chance, check out their program. AceraHealth.com is their website. You can check out their facility in Costa Mesa. It's really amazing with the stuff they do and the clinician, the team they have, the peer support group team. Everything they do is about helping first responders. So if you know someone who's a first responder, if you're a spouse of a first responder and you know that person needs to go and contact them, do it because they're really helpful. And they also have a hotline that's 24/7 available. And it's designated for just first responders. It's 661-877-7241. So check it out. Other than that, today I have a really, really cool guest. His name is Matty Fiorenza. I wanted to make sure I got his last name right. And he's a retired Anaheim Firefighter paramedic for over 22 years. I met him at the PSA Peer Support Group Conference back in October. And just an amazing human being. He's been through so much in his life. And he talks so much about the struggle and everything going on. Aside from that, the liberation from his life really shows up in this conversation. And we talk about so many different things. It's a great conversation. I was really honored to speak to him. And, we're all doing this together to help this crisis that we're dealing with. It's about these conversations that open us up to more. So I hope you liked this episode. I loved talking to Matty. It was really, really awesome. And just listen in and take care. All right, everybody. Here with Matty Fiorenza. Did I say that
That's
right,
it,
dude?
bro. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, you nailed it.
So, and just to get started, Matty is a retired firefighter paramedic from Anaheim Fire Department. So I'm going to let Matty kind of give the introduction stuff on everything he's done, everything he's been through, everything he's experienced, because this is what this is all about. This is about human experience, man. And it's like, this is what we are all about. It's subjective, everyone's experience.
Mm-hmm.
Everything our eyes have seen, our hearts have felt. Like it's deep, and everyone has something, right? And our stories, I think, speak to everyone, and that's probably one of my favorite things on this podcast platform is that, So anyways, brother, thank you for showing up.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me, man. This is great. I like the feel in here, man.
Yeah.
I really do.
Cool.
I'm very sensitive to energy and there's some good energy in here, man. I felt it when I walked in. So thanks for having me in your space. So I was a Anaheim firefighter for 22 years and I started to struggle with post-traumatic stress, and that led to a lot of dissociative behaviors and essentially a couple suicide attempts. I had a couple really good people, combat veterans, come back for me, man, and they taught me some things about how to heal and how to get well that weren't on my radar at all. And things like somatic work, meditation, connection with other human beings on a level that I never thought I'd connect with other men, especially coming from, the trauma that I experienced as a kid, and we were able to process that. I didn't know that was a thing, right? That stuff was so buried, and didn't know why some of these things were coming up, and some of these calls that I had been on were staying stuck, and from there, it just, I got really good at speaking to this stuff, and I learned that you got to give it away to keep it, so I started to put myself out there. I went back to this program, this suicide prevention program for combat veterans, where I volunteered essentially as a shepherd for 3.5 years. And I was in that sacred space, and it changed my life forever. Like, to carry, the impact it had on me, and then to carry other men and women through this 5.5-day program and teach them what I learned and share my experience and how I got well and what I was doing, and then, like I said, giving away to keep it. I saw miracles happen, doing in the round pen with horses, doing equine therapy, and I started a really deep meditation practice of my own. I went to 2 Vipassana meditation courses. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's the technique the Buddha taught. It's purity, and it's 10 days, and you meditate 18 hours a day, and you eat vegan, and you take a vow of silence. You don't talk. And man, it was like, I've been through Fire Academy. I've been through all that probation. Like, I thought those things were hard, man, sitting with yourself and for that long without talking, having any, eye connection with anybody. It'll change your life, man. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it was so impactful. So yeah, I've put myself out there since then. I've worked in treatment a little bit, because I'm also in recovery. So, I think when first responders specifically are in a lot of pain, they go to what's readily available, and it's in the culture. So, alcohol is poison,
for sure.
And there's a lot of reasons why that is not good for you. Not just, the trouble that it can get you in, but I mean, it kills. Guys go out after a call and they drink alcohol after a traumatic event, and you're not allowing your body to do what your body needs to do to heal. And that's, you kill the good bugs in your gut that create the chemicals in your brain that help your brain heal. And then you don't sleep well, and it's in REM sleep when we process this stuff. So it's just, there's so much to it, but I can go off on so many tangents, but
no, for sure, man.
Yeah. So I just, through my own healing, I learned that I'm a wounded healer. And so I try to align myself with the right people and try to put myself out there enough and to help the next guy, because that's what it's all about. And there's so much good stuff out there, today on different ways to get on the other side of things. But like you said, it's, we're on this life journey, and a lot of these first responders are stuck in this paradigm that their life is, they're going to be this archetype forever. Right. And the truth is it's not forever. It's a season. And, and I even thought that, right. That being a firefighter was the end all be all. And that I was going to have this 30-year career that was going to be wonderful, and that I was going to leave, just, whole. And that's not what happened, and now I really feel in my heart that that was a season of my life. It was a training ground. That's where what I call the universe or God put me, to learn how to act in my real purpose, which is to go back for these folks that are suffering and show them what's possible for their lives, through recovery, however that looks, So yeah, bro, that's where I'm at today. And it's, but I have a daily practice that is like, I can't go out into the world and be of service without my daily practice. And it's like, I'm very serious about it. And
what is it?
Prayer and meditation. Yeah. I start each day with reading some type of spiritual reading, and then I do a meditation in the morning, and I actually get on my knees and pray. And then, those are the musts. Those are the musts. Yeah. And most days I'll go to a 12-step meeting. That's part of my daily practice, and work within the boundaries of a spiritual program. There's a couple that I like to be a part of, because I think it's important to be part of a community of practice.
Yeah.
That's, I think that's missing in our culture. A lot of people just have lost that, and it's important. It keeps us out of our dissociative behaviors when we're in some kind of community that's doing something for the greater good, and it's not all about me, And so I do that, and then throughout the day I make sure that I call a couple people and people that come to mind. Like I've really through my meditation practice have learned that when something comes up and it's not me, that there's some action that needs to be taken.
Yeah.
And I've really learned to listen to that. So I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but a lot of the times, like, someone will come up and then I'll call them and they'll be like, dude, I was just thinking about you, or I was just going to call you. Right. We're all spiritually connected.
Right.
And when you have a daily practice of your own, you pick up on those things. I think Verizon has us all snowed, man. We can't communicate, in other frequencies. I really believe
that's
that.
great, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
No, what's crazy, man, is like, I've done that a lot more. I started listening to my intuition when I would be driving home from a shift, and someone from like my paramedic class, almost like 10 years ago, just came up my memory of something.
Right.
And I'd call that person. He works for a different department. And I was like, hey, dude, what's going on?
Right.
And he'd tell me this whole story about his life. We haven't connected in like 2 years, and like he was going through it, and we needed to talk.
Yeah.
And so that's really, when you empty just the debris in the mind, these powerful messages come through, and these insights come through. And that's the important part about the practice of meditation, or whatever, however you want to call it, right? There's a stigmatism to it. And I really want you to come into a grasp of what and how, once you have clarity and you're walking through your life in such a way, the superhuman nature starts to dwindle into the core of your being, and you start to become more. There's more to us than what we think. And so I honor that part of myself, and I trust that part of myself. I think people have lost sight on trusting themselves, and that's great that you're able to do those practices and be able to do that. 'Cause that shows maturity for yourself, and it shows like, throughout all of it, that's what we're meant here to do, and I do, you brought this up, and it just triggered something in me, was like disassociative behavior. And I've talked about it before, and I don't think people quite understand what that is, because, I was really good at disassociating,
Right.
and that's a trauma response.
Right.
Usually it's people who are in trauma. When a wounded animal is wounded, it goes to be alone by itself. And so if you want solitude, just know that is a normal response for you to do that. There are certain times when you need solitude with yourself, but if you find yourself to cut yourself off and start to numb, that's a trauma response.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think I know for me personally, like I was never taught, by essentially another man. Right. We talk about initiation, which we've lost in our culture. Like, I was never initiated properly by another man. And I wasn't until I went to Save a Warrior, which is an initiation. And this is where I learned that the answers are out here. Right. And it's definitely not about numbing. It's about going within and taking those moments of collision and getting curious about it. Right. And not being overwhelmed by emotions. And that's, because there's physiology that goes along with this stuff. Right. So our nervous systems, especially for me, from my childhood, before I even stepped onto the fire engine, man, my nervous system was on fire. and I had all these, I was programmed, like we're talking about, to when this hurts, reach for this, right? When this hurts, do that. When I don't feel good, like I just wanted to feel good all the time. And that's not, we're not created to feel good all the time. We have, we're in these meat suits trying to figure it out. And so in those moments, it's now, instead of reaching for something to change the way I feel or doing an action, going after my own chemicals, right? Like process addictions, I go inward, and it's okay to be alone in those moments, as long as we don't sit in it, right? Yeah. And we go to some other tool to ground ourselves, and that's, I think, in our culture completely. I think there's like you said, there's a stigma around some of these practices that have been around forever, right? Yeah. and now it's stigmatized, and people are coming out of their skin, and it's like, and it's about, right? I think most people, in my experience, there's some type of trauma, right? I mean, birth is trauma, right? And we get fragmented, and the journey for me has been about taking back those pieces of myself, my true self, and no matter what the outside world is doing, like you said, and listening to that intuition and listen to that inner voice by going within and saying, okay, yeah, this, not this, and going out into the world, a better man, essentially, and the man that was created to be, in my opinion, and that's, like I said, we've already talked about it a couple of times. What it comes down to is going and finding other people to connect with and to help, to show empathy and compassion for. That's when we come from a place of that, and that's the way it's the way we were supposed to move through this planet,
Yeah. I mean, you're saying, a lot of these things you're saying, like, they're so valid. One of them is the fragmentation. Mm-hmm. And that is an ancient shamanic practice would be something called soul retrieval. Mm-hmm. And in a state of trauma, the only way that they would decipher, because the people were connected to the self, the soul, the spirit so much that they were able to understand it and be able to articulate what's happening to the body during trauma. And they say it's a soul retrieval of these fragmentations. It's like a shattering of an experience that is subjective to someone. And they are able to retrieve that piece of you that happened, 10 years ago. And so some people have come across incidences like just a car accident, right? In a car accident, they say that your soul leaves your body, so you don't have to feel so much pain. Right. So that's a fragmentation in itself. I mean, you have, a good example would be Travis Barker, because he was in that plane crash, right. And I think he's one of two that survived. The other guy overdosed a year later. Right. Just crazy, but right. He was in fear because he went through that soul fragmentation, and he had a guy who helped him with breath work. The guy's his networking, and I think it's like awaken breath work, and he helped him, coach him to breathe through the fear, and like this, it just something as simple as coming into the breath, because you're going into the body, and like you push past this resistance of the mind, right? And that's essentially where we're all getting to this place here, is realizing the mind is not our master, and it can be a greater enemy, and right, through your moments of having to sit with yourself and go through like that unraveling of the mind, that is the hardest thing to do, man, because I've done it myself. Yeah. It is seriously, you're at battle, Oh yeah. It is really difficult. Yeah. You feel like you're going insane.
Yeah, you do. I did. I did. It actually, I don't know, it's bringing up emotion. Yeah. Because my ego was created within me to protect me as a kid. It's what I used for protection, but there's a point in your life where doesn't serve you anymore, you know, and trying to, I mean, essentially break through that. That's what you're battling with. You're battling with this false, you know, all your false beliefs, your false sense of yourself. Like it's powerful, man. And I mean, I sat there, you know, in 29 Palms at this meditation center. And
What's the place called again?
It's the Vipassana.
Yes, my friend Dan just went there, and he was on here, and we talked about his experience over there. So that's crazy. You went and did the same thing. This is a silent retreat, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that, I mean, when you say silent retreat, it's like, man, it's way more than that, dude.
Yeah. That's what he's
saying. Yeah.
You
You see
too.
it just like there were meditations where certain things came up that I had to sit with.
Yeah.
You know, and there were some things that were so scary. I'd have to open my eyes. I'd have to come out of it. Expansion. I had moments where, you do, Anapana for 3 days, which is the breath. You're just kind of, you know, and then they teach you Vipassana on the 4th day. And the second time I went, I ended up and it's a long session, you know, you do like hour, 15 minutes sessions. Then you kind of go back to your cell and have a break or whatever. Or you can walk on the walking path or whatever. But I had this moment where during the Vipassana one, which was it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours, where I was in the meditation hall and then I was on the walking path. And I just stood out there and I just felt this, it was coming from the universe down through me into the ground. I felt like I had roots, and I came to out there in this moment of just wholeness. And I just felt one with everything, including the earth, all the way up into the heavens, man. And I was like, man, how did I even get out here? It was awesome. Stuff like that. And there's some terrifying moments, you know, and about day 3, yeah, you go insane, you know, you go crazy because you're just like, so I highly recommend it. But yeah, that unraveling it's intense, you know, it's intense, and you can get there different ways, you know. That's the way I prefer. But this whole idea of, you know, craving and aversion that causes suffering, there's more to it than just the meditation, right? Because the Goenka, the teacher, he's passed for many years, but a lot of the recordings that you listen to, you have assistant teachers there, but he's the teacher, and they have the discourses at the end of the day where he explains in these discourses exactly what you're going through, and it's divine, man. It's super cool. Yeah, you got to do it, bro.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, because you were mentioning to me, like, the guys at your station would like mock you, you know, for these practices, and you know, I get that same response because I'm choosing a different path, a path of peace, you know. And I always say this concept that I had learned is that when people judge something, they fear it.
Oh yeah,
you know, because they're threatened by something they don't understand,
right?
And so it causes people to look at themselves.
That's it.
And unfortunately, you know, that becomes a projection onto someone else, you know. And
that's it,
you know, and my whole point of this is I just do this because I want to be at peace, you know. And every shift I start at work, I go do my things I need to do, my responsibilities as a firefighter and as a medic, but I do my meditation right after, and I do my qigong movements, you know. I move my body and I make sure I'm opened up,
right,
and I'm not stiff, you know. So I make sure I get this done because it is my anchor of how I operate, and I can't do without it because it just makes me feel clear, and I'm able to navigate my mind better. And every day is different. Every day is a day of transformation, and I have to make sure I'm in my own reckoning of myself each day. You know, my mom always tells me, like, I forgive myself every day. And I'll never forget when she had told me that, and I was just like, you're right.
That's amazing. That's
know?
Amazing. I love that. Yeah.
It's great, right?
That is good. That is good.
It shook me when she told me that too.
Yeah. Right? Because it's, you know, when I ended up at that trauma retreat, I hated myself, man. I hated myself. And that's good. That's good. You know, we talked about a little bit, you mentioned grief, you know, it's stored in every cell of our body, you know, and if we don't process that grief, it manifests itself in sickness, and it comes out in different ways. And a lot of us are, you know, these guys told me, they said, you know what, PTS, Matty, is a lot of unmourned grief. And you just need to, you know, the mature mood of a warrior is sadness. And the only way through sadness is tears. And I couldn't cry for a long time. Now, bro, it still hits me like hard, because we have a lot of grief, and then we're being called out to other people's grief, you know, and having to deal with these situations. And man, I wish I would have known this stuff back when I was working. I did towards the end, you know, where I was, where I had a daily practice at work, and I was doing all these things that you're talking about. But I, you know, from the beginning, like, I feel like that's, one of my intentions is to get this information to the newer generation that's coming, because they're open to it, but they're not prepared at all for what they're going to experience. You know, that's been my experience working with guys.
No, for sure.
In the basic fire academy, and they're just, you know, because I know my expectations, and we talk about that when I talk to young guys. I'm like, what are your expectations? What do you think this is going to be like? You know, and no class can, you know, prepare you for what you're going to see. You know, you're going to think it's, you know, you see it in the book, you think it's kind of cool. You're going to want to be there, right? It's why it's exciting and all that stuff. But like what we're talking about, what it does to your soul, man, what it does if you don't have some kind of a daily practice, and you're not looking at how this trauma is going to affect your mental health, your physical health. I don't know, man. There's a part of me that feels like all this cancer we get is a manifestation of the trauma, and not so much the chemicals we're exposed to.
Yeah, I had so I got into a lot of the metaphysical, you know, things of the body, the physical manifestations of what the body is. And you're mentioning this. I read this book years ago, and it was called No Ordinary Moments, a guidebook to a way of a peaceful warrior. So in that book, it says the body will cry what the eyes refuse to shed. And it's simple as that. Like you're saying, like that grief, man, it'll store in the body. And so I've noticed, you know, through helping people with my own, you know, services to help others, this illness is just unprocessed emotion, anger. It catalyzes into cancer, right? Because your body is showing you something, right? It's trying to send you a message, and you're not listening, right? And I've dealt with my own chronic pain for years because I wasn't listening to what I needed to process. And it takes a lot of work, man. And, you know, I'm fortunate enough for pain to be my greatest teacher. And I am witnessing, you know, my own transformation through pain, because I'm tired of being in pain, but it's led me to so much of my understanding of myself and to see myself, you know, it gave me the inner vision of how to see who I am, my blueprint, how I internalize things. Right. And, you know, if I did not have the pain, you know, I would still be a knucklehead drinking on my days off, you know, just womanizing, you know, porn addiction, all of it. It was making me sick. Right. And I think through my recognition of all that stuff, it showed me my truth, and I had to be honest with myself. I think that's one of the hardest things to do, is being brutally honest, man. Like, you got to just ask yourself some questions that require some truths to it, and you start to really unravel your life. You know?
Big time. That's a big one, and a lot of guys don't want to do that because it's painful.
Yeah, man. For sure, dude.
Yeah, it hurts, man. It hurts, but if you do it in a safe place with the right people, it's so healing, and I love being that person for someone else. You know, like, guys know when they come to me. I'm not a therapist by any means. I never claimed to be one. I'm fucking actually glad I'm not. Yeah. But therapy is great, and therapists have their place. but just to meet somebody, compassion is meeting someone suffering with love. And when you can do that and remove any shame or help them, by them telling you whatever, and I've heard, in sacred space, I've heard it all, man. You know what I mean? And that's what we do. We get these guys to talk about it, grieve, and then, love on them until they can love themselves, right? That forgiveness, like your mom talked about, I forgive myself every day. I fucking love that. Bro. It's so good. Yeah, it's yeah, I don't know.
No, I think that recognition of the masculine, true masculine, right, is to be the protector, right. And you want to protect your brother, and I think for me, I grew up listening to a lot of reggae music, so, but they're always talking about, being your brother's keeper. And I always looked up to, Bob Marley, and he always talked about how this was the music of the people, and like how he instilled that family part to the music. And that's why you go to a reggae concert, man, like there's no fights at a reggae concert, dude. And if there is, everyone's going to be looking at you in disgust and just despicableness because like, what are you doing here, man?
Right.
And so, a lot of my, I guess, programming has come from a lot of the music I listen to, what I mean? And I think that was really something that always spoke to me. And I always found myself, one of the qualities I carried is loyalty,
Yeah.
And to have people just to talk to. And because sometimes a therapist they're going to show you, they're going to be a mirror for you, you know what I mean? But you need that connection that really brings this part of the tribal piece of humanity that we're all craving.
Right.
And that goes back into that thing I talked about before, when you're just going to retreat, into your dorm at work or whatever. We're losing that part of us because we're in this place of, the weapons of mass distraction.
Right.
Because these things are meant, if you don't see it, I'm talking about like a collective thing here. Like if you don't see it, it's meant to make you distracted so you're not connecting with other people.
Right.
And so this sickness is in this rat race, especially in this concrete jungle we're in right now.
Right.
If you see that, this is a design to keep us all from, coming together, and especially with the first responders, we have to do that. And that is one of the main things I preach. It's about that unity piece because we've been disconnected and severed from each other. And when we're bringing in the love of your brother, and your sister on this job, recognizing we all do the same thing, we're all exposed to the same thing. We're going to have the same symptoms, so we have to stop the egoic self from being a distraction from that too, and I think when you've gone through that play with yourself, with that insanity, and you recognize, wow, this is actually quite scary, but it's just a mind purge, it has to unravel itself. And so when you become the witness of it and you start to just let it just release itself, you realize who has the power here. Right. And there is that seed of self when you're watching everything, and you learn to have that curiosity. You said that earlier, and you start to recognize that curiosity when you're watching things. It really helps the process because you stop taking it so seriously. Right. What I mean?
That's been a big one for me. When I was taught to be the observer and to get curious, things changed for me big time, because that's a message. Yeah. It's a message, but like you said, like we can numb it or, really try to push against it to do nothing, but you're doing something by trying to do nothing. I don't know. It sounds weird, but
no, that's what it is.
Yeah. But to become the observer and to see these things, and I love that. Not take yourself so serious, and just that's when the release happens, and then you can sit with it, And I think where my greatest asset is that wounded healer, and helping other people walk through things heals me as well. Because like you said, we're all connected, and yeah, man, gosh, I love this conversation.
Yeah.
By the way, this is good stuff. I wish more of us could, in our profession, have these experiences.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, it's just about us being the light and to continue to work our own practices and to have these conversations that, so people listen to them and go, man, because people, when people ask me, Matty, how'd you do it? Or how do you, I'm like, well, it happened organically and it's different for everybody, but I think that's a big thing, is being able to look at yourself, be the observer, especially in the moments of discomfort, and be able to get on the other side of it, because there's some information in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Something I have kind of, you got to paint a picture, right? For things, for people to get a concept into like how to go through this,
Mm-hmm.
And I always say that you have to visualize your mind as like a forest, and you're always going to be stuck
Mm-hmm.
in this labyrinth of the mind. So how do you get out of it? Well, people aren't guided on how to get out of the forest.
Right.
Okay. If you're stuck in the middle of the forest, it's really hard to find true north.
Right.
And so it's about this mind-heart connection.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where your compass becomes. And it seems so esoteric and so, I don't know, people resist that when you start mentioning the heart and feelings and things like that. I just want to let you know, those people who are resisting that, you are the ones causing the problem.
Right.
Because you're not allowing the truest form of who we are manifest.
Right.
The true way to healing always ends at the heart.
Right.
And it's through emotions. Emotions are the electrical charge on how your thoughts manifest in your life. So if you are suppressing that charge, those volts that come from the heart,
Right.
you're resisting what is true to you, what is true to every single person. And the thing about our job, this line of work, is that our hearts become calloused.
Right.
And it's a means of protecting ourselves from having this place of sympathy versus empathy and helping people, so you don't get damaged.
Right.
So we become in that way, and having no sleep and all that stuff, poor diet, it all comes together. So like, that's how I can show that to you is that, and that mind-heart connection is been proven, like that there are 40,000 neurites that are neurons separate from the mind that bring this connection.
Right.
And there's just these pathways that it's meant, that we're designed that way to operate. And so if you're going through therapy and you're so stuck, it's because you're not going in here to your chest, and because that's where your answers are.
Right.
And I had to learn the hard way through that, and I had to realize, like you said, you hated yourself. I had to recognize I hated myself at some point, because I went into meditation, into like my heart, and I realized there was a block there.
Yeah.
And it was like this deep hate for myself. And I was like, whoa, dude, that was like dark. And I gave myself compassion when I recognized that.
Yeah.
And that was the part of me realizing what was keeping me from receiving love.
Right.
Was that moment.
Right.
And so I've been having to understand that for quite some time now, of how did that come up, and it was just years of not listening to myself, man, and it became that. And so now I'm able to see the blocks by going there, and it's been showing me so much. And so that's just a good way to look at us as human beings, is that we're heart-based, and it's, I always have this intention. It's like, I want to intend to have the mind of the Buddha and the heart of the Christ. If I can live like that, I'm good.
Right.
Am I like that all the time? Hell no, man. It's hard, dude.
Yeah, it's hard. We got to keep bringing ourselves back in some way. But you're right. It's always, if you return to love, that's the easiest and fastest way. I'll give you an example. What came up for me right now was, those years of running those calls and just, making jokes about it, or drinking over it, or I don't know, all those old ways of dealing with it, for lack of a better term, once I learned all this stuff and I was able to make it back to work, I actually had a SIDS death, and the dad, it was a young couple. The baby was like a week old or whatever, or 2 weeks maybe. But the dad was on his way back he was working 2 jobs. He had, the wife mentioned that he was on probation, but the guy was like, he was getting his life together, man. Like these are like, we stay out of the story, right?
Yeah.
As best we can. We get the information, but like, I really leaned into the story this time. Like, I was listening to this woman, and she's like, he's going to be at the hospital. So we show up, and she's trying to make her way there. He shows up first. They call the baby, and that's, in my old self would be like, gone. Restocking the rig. I want nothing to do with that part of it, right? And this time was different. Like I just felt like I needed to be there, and so I put my arm around this guy, and we wept together, and for a while. And man, I remember that moment being really special. That it's okay for us to be there for these people in those moments, in that way, and I mean, it still brings up emotion, but it's not, it doesn't feel ugly. It's like, I don't know. It's a different feeling. It feels compassionate, empathetic. It feels like love, and sometimes love is overwhelming in a way that makes me want to cry, and that's what that was. And I'll never forget that moment, and I just, I wish I could, one thing I could go back and have more of those moments with people throughout my career, whereas I just wanted to, and like you said, it was a protection mechanism. Like but it was really healing, to sit in someone's suffering with them, because it's sad.
Yeah.
We deal with a lot of grief.
For sure.
So, but yeah, that's one of the things that's coming up about maybe some of the things that we need to do differently. And I know, but like you said, we're all human beings. We're all spiritually connected, and we get to be there. Like this was the, when I had all these ideas about my PTS and how it was this call and that call and that, when I had a different perspective about, man, we get to be there when people are transitioning. Like, how special that is, bro? That's like, yeah. I got goosebumps right now. Like that's a huge honor to be around as much death as we're around. Like I had to change my perspective and went, look, like the universe put me here. God put me here in this moment to be here while people are transitioning. And so I would, when I had someone in the back of the ambulance that was dying, or, we were trying to revive or whatever, I would say different prayers, and I would, to myself, obviously can't, freak out our partner, but, it was different. It hit a little bit differently when I went back to work, and I was able to be there for the transition rather than I'm here and this is death and this is, it really helped me a lot.
Yeah, it's a perspective change.
Yeah.
And I think that at some point in our career, we have to come across that perspective change.
Yeah.
And when you start doing that, you start altering the job in a certain way, mm-hmm. because before like really long time, I started like recognizing each person in the firehouse, especially as a child, as a little boy or a little mm-hmm. girl. And I stopped being nervous, especially as like a young firefighter. I stopped mm-hmm. being nervous when I did that. It switched my perspective. I was like, wait, everyone's just acting up like a child right now, And the ones who became my mentors on the job were the ones who I couldn't see as a child because they were so mature. Mm-hmm. And that was an interesting factor for me. I recognized the maturity in people who truly understood human connection and who truly understood leadership.
Right.
And they didn't have to have, those badges on their collars to show that. You know, it was someone's perspective on life who was able to lead themselves in such a way that brought a sense of peace And those are the people who sleep the best.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just so crazy how you can just change things, right?
Yeah.
The way you see it.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be that person who's just always MFing this and that and the department administration, this, and it's like, dude, you can't change that. Okay.
Right.
So you're going to ruin it for everyone else actually, because you're so negative.
Right.
And that everyone gets caught up in it, man. You know, and
it's hard, man. It's an energy that travels through the station. I love that you said that. Because I have a very similar experience, because people started to come to me with their trauma. And when I heard someone's trauma, I looked at them differently. So these guys that are the guys that are being made fun of a lot of the time, I saw them differently. I like the idea of seeing them as a child, because essentially looking at their trauma, a lot of it was childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And then you'd see it in their behaviors, and it helped me to have more empathy for those people, because I'm like, man, this guy, even when they were like, I've had a couple instances of different high ranking people come at me, and I was able to just have that sense of peace and just not take it personal and just see their trauma, and go, okay,
it's usually how it works. And you're going to come out, you're going to be threatened by, that's why,
right.
People are threatened by sovereignty for some reason,
Yeah.
because they don't have it, and I think it's a gift to be sovereign, but it comes with life experience, with the things you have. And personally for me, like, I know my wounds are internal from my home life and, my childhood,
Right.
It really didn't manifest through the work life stuff. For some reason, I have a way of knowing I'm doing my job,
Right.
But sometimes there would be like those moral injuries that come up that really just, it twists the knife, man.
Right.
And I think those are some things that people don't quite understand about moral injuries.
Right.
And it's whatever values you're holding.
Right.
And something happens where in life, whatever, an experience or a situation,
Right.
where it alters your values and your belief systems, and it starts to really just dig deep into the soul of your being, and it causes some self-conflict and some disagreements internally on a subconscious level. And when you have disagreements and you're fighting yourself essentially, right, with your values of who you believe you are.
Right.
Those are the things I think that really caused me harm, and that really ran really, really deep. And I don't go to therapy, but I have a pattern coach. And she teaches me the patterns of the totality of everything through consciousness, because she shows me the reason of something had nothing to do with that situation.
Right.
The patterns and the beliefs that were leading up to the event, the situation, the experience, those are the things I needed to look at more than it was the actual episode.
Right.
And that was really interesting as she starts to ask me questions about the things prior.
Right.
I started to realize, holy shit, like I am an asshole. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or I did not believe that about me, but
Right.
now I do. Now I see the truth. And so it becomes really interesting how I just on a phone call with her and she just asked me questions.
Yeah.
And it's a really simple 30-minute quick recognition of myself.
Right.
And it goes into my relationships. It goes into this podcast.
Right.
It goes into everything, and who I see myself as. And it really humbles me through my shame.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's where it all starts, right? What I learned is that the first responder community essentially is caught in an athlete warrior archetype, right? And athletes just want to look good. Warriors defeat, conquer, and collect the rewards. And it's a shame-based culture, right? And it's all generational.
Yeah.
Right? This shame gets passed generation to generation. And I love, you said these are a bunch of little kids, because they are. If you look at the community as a whole, really, I mean, not all of them, right? But a lot of them are damaged children in grown-up bodies with some type of authority over each other, right? All pining for, that promotion or the more bells and whistles and all the external shit, and what these guys taught me was to get out of that, those archetypes, is to be a statesman, which is to be of service to others without expecting anything in return, which guys get confused as to, what's service is not getting paid, right? I thought I lived a life of service, being a first responder, but the truth is, like, until you go out in the world and really help somebody without expecting anything in return, or when no one's looking, that's this true. And that not only brings me into the spirit, it helps me figure out who I am as a human being, and what my soul, longs for, and who my true self is. And that connects me with the universe through those acts of service. And it worked, it really worked. And, I'm just, a lot of this information is, it's really difficult for me to articulate. I'm sitting here like, cause it's so good. Like I'm feeling it here, but I'm having a hard time like articulating it, back when I was in the space a lot, like in sacred space a lot, it came a lot easier. But when you're in the world too much, like you said, we get kind of caught up in those different paradigms. It's good to continue to have those conversations and to unpack these behaviors like you do with your, what did you call it?
It's a pattern code.
Pattern coach. Okay.
And all it is they're essentially our behavioral patterns.
Right.
We behave a certain way, and what's underneath that is a reason why we behave that way.
Right.
And underneath that is a belief why we think we should believe or behave that way.
Right.
And underneath that belief system is the key that unlocks a door to like the root of something. And so it's like this simple practice of consciousness, and if I always was under the impression like your body is a reflection of what the mind is doing, and the mind is a reflection of what the spirit is doing. So if any of those are sick, coming from the spirit, from the mind to the body, you're going to manifest something. And, so you can really chip away at a lot through understanding why you behave. And I always tell people too, like, you're going to have these conventions and these people saying, oh, mindfulness. Oh, you need to be mindful. But everyone's looking at each other like, what the fuck is mindfulness, dude? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all it is you're bringing an awareness to who you are, and just watch everything you do. And you start realizing, be more conscious about what you're doing. Right. The way you brush your teeth, the way you react to something, the way you are thinking or behaving, it's just, that's the awareness of what we're talking about, because you start to see yourself more, and all you need to do is just see yourself, the internal self. Right. And we spend so much time on the external all the time. We were taught that as a child to focus on the external. Right. And that is the worst part, because it's a deeply ingrained programming to focus on that when internally is where the most important thing is. Right. And even when we go into relationships where we're doing the same thing, and it's just corrupt, and that's the sickness too, is that. So if you change the way you operate and you learn how operation is, then you start to really understand how it works, and you can really show up for yourself and other people, your family, your work life in a different way. Yeah. And it just takes a little bit more of guidance, and I'm lucky enough to have mentors, people who've shown me. I don't know if I would have been able to work around it if I didn't have that, Yeah.
Yeah, that's super, super important. I have a spiritual advisor, and she's blind.
Oh, wow.
And she's amazing. Like, and she was my therapist in treatment, like of all, and I had been to a bunch of therapists before, but there was something special about this woman. She's just a little blind lady, and it worked. And she speaks this language. So I'm thinking about this, some of the questions she asked me is really just patterned what we were talking about, right? When she asked me, okay, this happened, Matty, but tell me what led up to that. Like what was going on here and here and here. And she's, she's one of my favorite people. I connect with her every day. And she has a lot of insight, that most people don't, because they can see, and just, thinking about, mindfulness and how she is always pointing me back to the internal, and how important that is. And, just, I don't know, I think I talked about it when I came in, but over the last couple weeks, I've been, just I'm looking for direction. And my old pattern or behavior would be to go force something, go do something, go force something. And I'm really right now focusing on I'm just hearing, just do nothing, just stand still. And these things are starting to, everything, the universe is always conspiring in our favor, right? It's this that gets in the way of everything. And just over the last couple of weeks, I found that, there are things manifesting that if I just sit and wait and be patient and continue the daily practice, that things will show up, and then I read a good book Michael Singer wrote called The Untethered, The Untethered Soul, but there's the Surrender Experiment, which is his story essentially, and that really struck me. I tried to go back to that. It was just like whatever came my way, I just did to the best of my ability, and then the next door opened, and then the next door opened, and the next door opened, and now he's living what I would call successful life. And that's what I really try to focus on in these times of, uncertainty, which is difficult I think for me, and like you said, it just goes back to being a little kid that was always uncertain of where we're going to live, where the next meal was going to come, who was going to hurt me next, you know what I mean? It's that stuff. And how do I apply that to a culture that is full of people like that? I think that's our mission, right? Is to bring these conversations into that community, which is a difficult community to have these conversations in, because like you said, there's just so much resistance and no one wants to look at themselves. They want to, we talk about shame triggers. Have you ever heard that term before? That, there's shame triggers are when your shame is brought up when people don't see you in situations that you want people to see you as. The masks, the mask comes off for a second and it brings up all that shame, and it's overwhelming for people, and I think there's just a bunch of, like you said, little children just shame. They're just getting shame triggered all day long.
It's like Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, totally. It is.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
No, I think something you're saying is like an important lesson is to be still.
Yeah.
So to be still is really hard for people, but it is an important factor when you are in the eye of the storm, because that's when you're bringing chaos around you, but it doesn't affect you. Right. It's one of the hardest practices to do, but everything, as long as you do your work, you show up for yourself and you show up for others. Sometimes all you have to do is nothing. Right. And everything around you will start to turn and manifest in its own way. And it kind of brings up, I saw this show called Shogun. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a pretty damn good show. It's about it's based off a book off of a Japanese military leader. He's called the Shogun. And he basically is like this super intelligent person that lets all the chaos revolve around him to where he doesn't have to do anything. He basically puts people in positions that cause chaos, and he watches people just kill themselves basically. And he's just super brilliant in the way he manifests. He doesn't do much. He barely moves, but he has such an intelligence about learning about chaos, learning about intelligence of people's own behaviors, making a mess of everything. Right. And it's super fascinating to watch and witness, because a lot of times, you can do that for yourself, and only at a place of sovereignty when you can do that. You know what I mean? When you truly know yourself, right? You can show up in that way and be still in moments. And you can recognize when you're at work on a call, if you're in the most calm and you're still, you recognize everything around the room a lot easier. Right. And that's what we try to teach young probationary members about that, because if you're going into this spinning method and your heart rate's jacked and your adrenaline's pumping, right, you're losing sight of the big picture. So a lot of times after experience, you recognize you have this character to start recognizing to be the more calm and still you are. You're seeing the bigger picture. You're recognizing, but you can apply that in your own life as well, your personal life at home and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, I really relied on my intuition, as a medic. I think we are a little bit more tapped into it on a day-to-day basis, because you have to use your skills there's a certain amount of the book work that you have to know about what direction you're going in. But there's always that, when you look at your partner and go, nothing's coming up, but something's going on, and I could say over the years, I was really good at that. I had a spidey sense that made me a good medic to be able to, go, gosh, I don't know what it is, but it's something, and maybe we need to go with this person or whatever. And then it, hey, this was going on. It's like, oh man, really glad, because if you don't have that, it can get you in trouble.
Oh, for sure. Without a doubt.
And there's guys that they don't, or they don't care, and they end up sending you someone in the hospital that they shouldn't have, without a medic or whatever. But yeah, man, this is good stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things, cause I met you at the PSPSDA conference and we talked about traumatic brain injury. That was kind of like the theme we were discussing. You had sent me to, through Bud's Odyssey, you sent me to a facility that was helping me with my traumatic brain injury. So I definitely wanted to talk about that, like what that is, because traumatic brain injury and CTE has become a silent epidemic, especially for, these athletes who are realizing it. And it had to happen to NFL players for everyone to recognize there's something going on. Right. But, this is a serious issue that causes so many neurological imbalances. And if you've had a traumatic brain injury and you're working for the fire department, it's going to be like a double whammy.
Right.
It's like taking 2 sticks of dynamite and having this synergistic effect of just explosion.
Right.
So I was fortunate enough to go through the program and have a ton of benefits from it.
Great.
But one of the things was you don't have to have traumatic brain injury to have the same MRI results or functional MRI results.
Right.
You can have PTSD or post-traumatic stress, PTS, whatever you want to call it. Those moral injuries I was referring to, those are the ones that can really cause that same functional MRI as someone who hit their head really hard.
Right.
So if you have both, you're really going to struggle. Your amygdala is going to be on fire.
Right.
All these things, man. So, I definitely want to talk about your experiences and how you came across that information and so forth.
Yeah. Well, I first learned the benefits of it through meditation, right? And from these guys teaching me that essentially, right, my nervous system's been on fire since I was a little kid. That affected my amygdalas, which grow over time if you don't have a kind of practice like meditation. And those chemical dumps you have destroy your neural pathways, right? And then what happens is over time we end up in our reptilian brain more than we're in our prefrontal cortex. And this is where this is the pause button. This is the third eye, some people call, or where you make the rational decisions. It's the impulse control, and we get caught in these loops. And that's the physiology behind some of this stuff, right? Like you were just talking about. So, I knew that before, and I read a book. It's called How God Changes Your Brain. And it was written by a bunch of neuroscientists who did a bunch of MRIs and on people who pray and meditate. And they came up with all this. They were from the University of Pennsylvania or something, but it's called How God Changes Your Brain. And that opened my eyes to a lot of this stuff. And it wasn't until I started doing neurofeedback and then started getting some of the, learning about alpha theta waves and the different brain waves that it puts you in, and how those different brain waves affect your behaviors and how you process certain things. And then started noticing, because of my own internal practice, that neurofeedback helped me fall asleep faster. I stayed asleep. And then I just kind of started geeking out on it a little bit more. And then I went to the Amen clinics and I had SPECT scans done of my brain. And when I was really at my worst, and that's where I found out that I had TBI. And it was right in my prefrontal cortex, right? Which when I saw that on a SPECT scan, I was like, it took a lot of the stigma that I was still shame around, you know, some of my behaviors that I was shaming myself. You're right. You're talking about the thing under the thing. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's like, that makes sense, right? Some of my behaviors are in that, because of that part of my brain is, and that pointed me to things like hyperbaric and different supplements that I take now and I've done afters and my brain is healed, right? We just, all these things promote neuroplasticity, right? Our brains can heal themselves. So that's where I learned it about myself. And then when I started to talk to more people and some really smart people that are out there, a lot of us have undiagnosed TBIs. And like you said, and it could just be in the form of those chemical dumps over time, destroying your neural pathways. And so I actually, I was clinically depressed for a long time. Like I had it all, bro. Anxiety, depression, PTSD, TBI. And I went and had some TMS done as well.
Oh yeah.
And that was really helpful.
We just had a guy on a facility that does TMS. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, you know, and I'm talking in talking to some of my friends about the recent suicides that we've had. A lot of these people were brain injured. They were brain injured, and they weren't treated properly. You know, they weren't treated properly, and this is something that we need to be talking about. And it's and there's a solution. You know, there's a solution, and we have to give these people more than just fucking psych meds. Excuse my language, and therapy.
Yeah,
Psych meds and therapy.
Agree, man.
You know, it's like there's way more to this, and especially in that arena, and because what happens with some of these people is they don't get better.
Yeah,
and they think this is it, man. And I'm not getting better. And I was there myself. You know, I thought, is it therapy and sobriety and medications? And I still don't I'm still coming out of my skin, you know, and it was around that time where God showed up, and it was like, I got the foundation paid for me to do SPECT scans. And then I went and had the stellate ganglion block, which I don't know if you've heard of. But,
I have not. What is that?
So your basal ganglia it's a bundle of nerves that kicks off the fight or flight process. And it starts to grow when you're under stress for a long period of time, when your nervous system is fucked up, it starts to grow more nerves. And what they do is it's an anesthesiologist, and it's an epidural. It's got the same medication in it. And they go in the front of your neck, and they hit that part of your brain, and it just hits the reset button.
No shit.
Yeah. Changed my life, dude.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. So, you get immediate relief. They've been doing it in the military for a long time. Sometimes prophylactically on the guys on the teams in between missions, just to settle their nervous systems down. But yeah, dude, I had them put me under, and how I woke up wailing, dude. It was crazy. And it felt like gratitude and grief all at the same time, just a release. And I looked over at the nurse, and I'm like crying. I'm like, is this normal? She's like, it's totally normal. She's like, it happens a lot, you know? And I was in the city of Chicago again, another, this is a huge pet peeve of mine, right? Like I'm going through the work comp process, and I'm getting denied Naprosyn, you know, and all these wonderful, generous people. And by the way, in my experience, it's all part of it, right? When you get love money, you know, through donations to a foundation to help people, it's just, it's different than an insurance company. You know what I mean? There's some energy in that stuff, right? And I like this space over here. So these nonprofits paid for me to do these things, and I got the most benefit, right? And so I went out to the city of Chicago. I was coming out of my skin the night before. I had locked myself in my apartment for 3 months, and now I'm like I drove for the first time to get my spec scans done. And I'm on a plane taking trains, and I'm in Chicago, the city of Chicago. And I walk out into the city, bro, and colors are brighter. Like those behaviors, those learned behaviors to protect myself, I would catch myself going, oh, I'm like, normally I would be positioning myself different in this situation, but I'm not positioning myself different. Like, what's wrong with me? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So it took a lot of therapy to get past some of these behaviors that I had because of this perceived threat, essentially. Right. And, I had the greatest time, dude.
Interesting.
And not only that, but, my wife and I were on birth control for 10 years. And if it happens, great. If it doesn't, and, she had it done as well. 2 days later, we conceived our daughter.
Oh, wow.
I have a 15-month-old daughter, Jordan.
That's
And,
crazy.
yeah, it's all part of it.
Yeah,
You know what
for
I mean?
sure.
Like God's given me a second chance. I have 3 sons as well, and they're all doing okay, you know, but they've been through a lot of shit. But this little girl, she's like a huge blessing, man. She's restored so much of myself, you know, the way I look at the world. Cause I had 3 sons. Like I have this little girl, and she's just, it's incredible, dude, to be present with this child and watch her experience life, you know, it's the best gift ever. And that all came from my practice, you know, and from my own healing. Cause my sons, they never saw a present dad. They saw the firefighter dad that was always gone, who was never present when he was with them, always somewhere else, always busy, on to the next thing. Or, you know, now I get this little girl where I can sit with for hours, dude, and be in the moment with her as she says her ABCs, dude. It's like rad. That's what life's all about, right? So
yeah, I mean, children are intelligent. There are teachers, you know, and I'm in awe of children all the time. And like, I think children are intelligent. We make them stupid with our own shit.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And it's like all the time that's because like my girlfriend's daughter, she always shows me something about myself. I'm like, damn, that really was, that cut me deep. And she said a couple words, you know, and I was like, okay, well, that's something I have to look at, you know, and it's just so interesting how children create this, well, they could do 2 things. They can either, you know, make you grow or make you constrict in yourself, you know, and be stubborn. And then that creates, you know, a life of suffering for everyone, you know. But if we're open with ourselves and we start to change our perspective and the way we do things, you know, it's just that awareness, you bring it to your children only because you've done it for yourself. You can do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's the power of this. And so I think it really is an honor, you know, to recognize that for yourself, man. And
it's super cool. Like I remember when she was just born, like looking into her eyes and seeing the universe. She just came from source, man. I'm like, teach me, you know, you were just there.
For sure.
You know, and my wife and I, we used to, you know, we like
funny.
ask her questions like, what was it like, you know, and like, I don't, you know, but to look in like, and I've had moments where I've looked into people's eyes and saw the universe, you know, the right people.
For sure.
And for sure with her, you know, and, so that was all. The doctors think it settled our nervous system down enough to conceive. And, you know, there's a lot of first responders out there as well that are, you know, doing all these other, you know, in vitro and all these different things to get pregnant when,
insane.
And paying all this money when the reality is, like you said, it's real simple.
Yeah.
Your nervous system's on fire. If you settle your nervous system down enough with some kind of a practice and maybe stay away from all these, you know, medical procedures. And, you know, I mean, I always thought of this as one too, but it's non-invasive. It sounds crazy, a needle in your neck, but dude, I would have done anything to not feel the way I was feeling, you know, and it needed to be done. So, highly recommend it. There's, it's called the Stella Ganglion Block. There's Stella centers all over the country.
Oh shit.
There's the first responders, they give you a discount, you know, it's, but, from there, you know, I was able to start to really, get back into my practice and unpack some stuff, you know, that I was afraid to talk about before, like in detail, and come out on the other side of a lot of stuff. But yeah, this whole TBI thing, there are some things that we can do that actually are really beneficial. And of course, insurance doesn't pay for them. And, if you're injured on the job, it's not the protocol for the insurance companies. And,
Right.
and so that has been a big struggle for me, I think, because there's all this information's out there now. Like, we have the information, we have the white papers, we have the books that are being written, we have really smart people talking about this stuff, but we don't want to change, and it's on both ends too. It's the decision makers, but it's boots on the ground too, because they're caught in that paradigm. It's like, and I have conversations with a lot of, I try to go to the labor board or the union and say, hey, look, man, like these things we need to offer these things to our people. Like, you need to fight for these things. Well, it's not really, what is their thing? Wages and, it's like, or job, conditions, what's the term I'm looking for? It's like what they
bureaucratic bullshit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's tons of that, and that's the number one, when I work with different peer support teams and they collect data on, so when they help somebody, essentially, they have a couple questions that they put back to their peer support team that are anonymous, just to kind of get an idea what people are struggling with. It's always the number one thing, dude.
What, traumatic brain injury?
No, bureaucratic stress or organizational betrayal. Yeah. And you know what that is? It's all childhood trauma. It's all abandonment shit. Yeah. And it's just coming up in the job. Yeah. Because we're brothers, man. This is our, like, you go, I go, right? Unless you start to struggle with your mental health, then you go. I don't know, man.
Yeah. The more you're climbing the ladder with, like, if you're going to promote it, you're getting deeper into the administration because you're being told by someone you don't respect, and that person's led by someone no one even respects. It just gets, it's a whole thing, but.
Yeah, bro. And that's just what we were talking about before, right? It's like a natural leader is someone who is authentic.
Right. For sure.
Like, authenticity and loyalty. Those are my big, right? You talked about your values. Like, loyalty is a big one of mine too. It's in the top 3. That stuff, energetically, it comes across to people.
Oh, for sure. You can feel it, man.
Yeah.
It permeates without any words.
Totally. Like, immediately. And whether you're conscious of it or not. Yeah. Right. And that's why it's important to me to be authentic, and to be vulnerable, and to be able to not really, I'm past the point of caring what other people think about me, man. Yeah. And these guys are caught in that big time. But yeah, going back to being a good leader, it's about being authentic and being loyal, and having, being able to go against that, the machine, right, and do what's right, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, period. Right.
Yeah, I think people get caught up in the approval of others.
Athlete warrior.
And if you're not, if you get stuck in that, you're not going into the sense of the knowing of who you are, right? Like a deep inner sense of knowing. And you can give yourself a practice with this and try it out with yourself. Like, ask yourself, how do I know myself? Mm-hmm. And sink deeper with the knowing of, and if it could be something you're skeptical about or something you're caught up with, go into the truth of something, and you can sink deeper with that knowing every day into the core of yourself. And and when that thing comes up or that trigger comes up, go into the knowing of who you are. And that anchor gets deeper every single time you sink in with it. And that really helps guide you in life, because you lose this sense of trying to gain approval from other people, because you don't need it anymore. You just don't desire it any longer. So one other thing I wanted to mention that the Buds Odyssey Foundation is free if you are a firefighter or a veteran. So I had promoted them on some earlier podcast episodes, but I just really want to let you know, if you have any type of traumatic brain injury, or if you just want to get checked out, they have these programs that are just really essential to, figuring out like how can you even regulate your nervous system.
Right.
The biofeedback is really beneficial to do that for yourself. And I just want people to also understand like nervous system education. Okay. Your nervous system is an electrical charge essentially. And so if you think about like a conduit, right? Like it's going to be, you either have it really, really condensed and you don't have much of that information flowing through your system. It could shunt when you're going through that fight or flight because things are shunting and then your rapid heart rate is just pumping. So it's going to shunt that. So over a period of time of that fight or flight, that shunting is going to close that conduit of your nervous system. So your nervous system's not regulating good enough. So going into practices by stimulating parasympathetic nervous system, you're actually excreting hormones through the body and allowing the calming of the system to come into place, and that conduit begins to enlarge and you're actually going to function way better. And something that's really interesting with nervous system function is drinking water is a conductor of your nervous system. So if you're not drinking water, what happens when someone's dehydrated, man? Your heart rate goes up and you're going to be out of whack. So drinking high quality water has been one of the biggest things and qualities I've done to where like I don't just drink any water. I drink high quality water that's going to run through my system, and I feel a difference when I do drink water. And I know when I'm not hydrated, I have to drink some more water. And that comes from just going into my knowing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I start recognizing myself and my system because I have these markers now. Like a red flag comes up, okay, you're dehydrated. You need to drink some water, or these certain things are coming through. And that comes with that self-awareness and recognition to your system, because you're the system operator. And if you lose touch with that part of yourself, like you're going to rely on everyone else to try to heal you when that's not how it works.
Right.
You know what I mean? No one's going to guess. And that's what doctors are doing, in my opinion. They're practicing medicine. So they're practicing on you. They're trying to figure it out because you've lost touch and sight with trying to figure things out for yourself. You know what I mean? And it's all it is proper education. And I think right now we're on a paradigm shift of recognizing the people who are biohacking things where you don't need money to do these things. It's just simple recognition of the operating system itself.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. And like I said, I was in the gym most of my life, and because of my injury, I wasn't able to go to the gym, and so I really started doing a lot of hiking, and that's, now that I can go back to the gym and start lifting weights again, I'm like, so I have a couple buddies who are veterans, and we're going to do Whitney in July. So I've been doing a lot of hiking and doing, I don't know, I'm learning a lot about, because I couldn't surf and I like being in the water and I couldn't do that either. So I'm like, being out in nature.
What was the injury?
I had two discs that were crushed in my neck, and it was just jacking me up. So I couldn't hold my head up and paddle. Wow. Like I was like having a buddy pull me out. It was bad.
That was from a surfing accident?
No, it was from work.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Years of, pushing ourselves, right? And not listening to my body. Just, but I had them replaced. It actually, lower back surgery sucked. This one was actually pretty easy, and my symptoms are gone. So, but what I've noticed about doing something physical in nature, I can really pick up on those things that you were just talking about. I only want to put good things into my body, because I notice when I'm out on the trail, how my body responds to the hike, whether I'm cramping up, where I'm getting sore, where I'm feeling pain in my body, and it's, I think that stuff is really important, not just going to the gym, lifting weights, like actually being out in nature and doing something like that. So I've been drinking a lot more green juice. My wife and I are juicing now and stuff like that. And you feel it. Yeah. Like you pay attention to that stuff and drinking water, and the stuff it's really simple, right? It's not, it can be a little time consuming, but I have my wife, she loves juicing. So I just drink it. Yeah.
Yeah. What's good about it too is like when you start changing things and you go back to something else, like, right. Like I used to love hot Cheetos, and when I cut that out of my diet and I started eating them again, I was like, dude, this is disgusting.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the changes you make, you go back to the old behavior, the old habit.
Right.
And you're conscious about it. You're recognizing it doesn't serve you any
Right.
longer, you know, and actually you feel like shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's the cool part too, is like you realize the change in yourself, and that kind of goes back into how every day is a new day. You know, you're transforming every day. And, you know, if you start making small changes, it really helps. And it's hard to make drastic changes all at once. So if you want to take it step by step, that's the best way to do it. Because, you know, it's hard to break old habits, but if you do it little by little, you start chipping away at it. It really helps.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, dude, just remove processed food from your diet, man, because it's just poison.
Right.
You know, once you do that and you go back, you're like, damn, I can't do it anymore. You know, and there's so many things out there for dieting and all that, and nutrition, and you can really have a hard time finding the truth behind some of this stuff. But I always say, just remove processed food. That's it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you recognize how much processed food is in everything.
Right.
You know, so it can be kind of challenging. But I think over time, like, I used to be really hard on myself for always doing certain things, and especially being at the gym and things like that. And I would do it so much that I was like self-punishing myself.
Right.
And I think firefighters have that part of themselves, that same habit. We all carry it because we always want to perform, and that we don't ever want to feel the shame, right? So we're preventing ourselves from having that. So we push ourselves to the limit,
right?
And we're losing the sight on how to counterbalance that,
right?
And the subtlety of movement, and learning how to be better on your joints, and learning the intelligence of your body in a certain way to where you're not injuring yourself anymore.
Right.
So I was telling you about this, that I just came across this thing called the Human Garage, and they have done these fascinating studies on the fascia of the body. And, you know, this book that came out, The Body Keeps a Score, is a really, you know, big book that's been changing people's perspectives on trauma, trapped emotion, because our bodies are intelligent, and the fascia is this interconnectedness of smooth muscle in the entire body. It's around our organs. It's what connects our nerves, our joints, our tendons, our bones. And so this method of what Human Garage is doing is that they put you in these positions where you're twisting your body to unravel the fascia, and you're breathing through it. And they say that, like, everything moves in spirals. We're designed in spirals. And so fascia is the same way. So the movements unwind the spiral in patterns, and through that unwinding, emotions come up, and you're releasing trauma. And people even say they have like BO because you're detoxing. The muscles are starting to detox from just the sewage of our body. So it's really fascinating. If everyone looks it up or downloads the app, it's a free program. It's like 28 days. It's like a 17, 18 minute program you do for 28 days. And it's like super fascinating, man. I'm still learning more about what this guy's method is. But I've seen videos of him where he's like doing deep fascia somatic release into the abdomen of people. And like this woman he was working on, like she was like levitating off the floor because she was having such a huge traumatic release of grief from abandonment from her ex-husband, that she was just releasing it. Like, and it was like this superhuman like release that she was having. And she couldn't cry. It was just like this somatic, like, you know, enigmatic release that she was having. It was like, no one can understand it. It's just trauma. You know? So that's been something that's been pretty recent that I really want to show firefighters because it's simple. And guys have chronic pain, man. Like I had chronic pain. I still have chronic pain after it's relieved a lot of that from me, from just injuries and stuff. But that was one of the main epidemics that has been occurring through the PSPSA conference that I mentioned. They mentioned chronic pain. Like we all have some type of injury, and when you have pain, you start to fear the pain. So it's like this never ending like loop within yourself, and you're going back into the mind with your own loops. And now you're in this deep pit, man. But there's ways to get out of it. And that's why conversations like this, we can understand, you know, like what can we do, you know? And it's really simple.
No, I love that. That's so good. 'Cause it's true. It's simple, not easy, right? It's about talking about this stuff. And I love that. I'm going to actually check that
try
out.
it out, man.
Yeah.
Me and my girlfriend do it all the time.
Yeah. When I was shepherding at Save a Warrior, I would see.
What is that place called again?
It's called Save a Warrior.
Warrior.
Yeah, they used to be over here in Malibu. Now they're just specifically in Ohio. But I would watch guys would have seizures. So guys have seizures, releasing trauma. I went into a guy's room one time who looked like he was having an MI. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen trauma getting released and how it manifests, coming out of somebody's body. It's a real thing, man, and I've, I remember taking this one guy to the VA after he had the seizure and them saying they couldn't explain it. I'm like, well, I can. And I helped start a trauma retreat for spouses of first responders, my wife and I, and with a couple clinicians. And I remember one story of a woman with some sexual trauma and doing the whole somatic thing there, and her having chronic pain in that area that she expressed after the retreat was gone. And it's like, it's important for us to keep talking about this stuff and letting people know that trauma is stored. It's stored in those areas of your body. And it's not, it's about these practices that we can help people get on the other side of that, and it could be something as simple as, the stuff you're talking about, and people just don't know, or they think it's woo woo.
Yeah, I mean, not like I had said before, like people are resisting that. Those are the people that are causing the problems because they're not open to something new. You know what I mean? Because it's just hard, man. And you have to just recognize, like, what are you going to choose? Your pain? My pain led me to this human garage thing where I'm recognizing and understanding things better. Yeah. That's the thing, man, is like, what does it take? I always talk about this, like, what is it going to take, man? More suicides for these departments and these agencies to do something. Right. And now we're getting more and more stuff because there has been more suicides since the lockdown. It's like increased even more. Right. And so, I mean, that's why we started this podcast in general, is because of that. Right. And it's, unfortunately, there are martyrs that come through who are showing us through their demise, like, what needs to happen. Right. And what is it going to take? Is it going to take your pain? Is it going to take a divorce or a child custody battle that's going to send you there until you're completely suffering? You're crawling on your knees. Right. You're suffering in the muck of your own shit to get there. What I mean? That's usually what it takes, especially for us who are stubborn as shit. Right.
And you're right. I think we have a culture of people that they start identifying with it, becomes their identity. They like it. Yeah. And that's, how do you get on the other side of that? Right. You take people out of the paradigm and you bubble wrap them with love and sacred space is the answer, and a lot of it is that they like it. They like being in that space. And I was there, I because I hated myself, right? I felt like I deserved this punishment unconsciously and just kept repeating these cycles of shit. And then and this idea of this is addiction to our own significance. It really causes a lot of suffering, So I got this addiction to my own significance, right? And I don't really know. It's all a mask. It's all just athlete warrior shit. It's a shame-based stuff. And then I'm brain injured and I'm not sleeping well and I'm eating crappy. And right, there's so many layers to this onion. And it's, I hope it doesn't take more suicides. It's the right people, hearing the message and implementing the right practices and into their departments, and throwing money at it is not, in my experience so far, you throw money at it, it just brings the sharks into the water, dude. I've seen a lot of shitty people take advantage of our suffering brothers and sisters, man, because there's money thrown at it. And that's, like you said, I can honestly say, besides maybe the disc replacements in my neck, that everything I've done has been for free or with money someone's donated to help me. That's it. You know,
you got to trust, man. You got to trust the process, even though when you're in it, it's like, it feels like hell, but you know, there's always a way, you know?
Yeah.
No, I think for me, I've struggled with suicide ideation, you know, and that is what kind of led me deeper into my own healing, because I finally said no to it, you know, and you know, that voice got smaller and smaller until it didn't exist anymore, you know, but I went there, you know, and I would have to sit in it and I stopped fighting it, and that's what it was. And that's what really got me past it, you know. But when you're in that moment of despair, of wanting to fucking end it,
right?
You know, so I don't know, you know. I'm fortunate enough to have people around me who love me so much. Unfortunately, I didn't love myself,
right?
And that's what got me into finding out what that meant.
Yeah.
And the deeper layers under it that really showed me my truth. And I think that's one of the biggest things through the suicide ideation was my truth. My truth led me, and that's a famous expression, the truth shall set you free, right? And I think that was what really, really great, because I actually asked myself, do you really want to kill yourself? The answer was no.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's when I started asking questions against it or going through it. You know, I sat in it and I started to witness it, and I started to be with it, and I started to just like take care of it, and it just dissolved.
Right.
So I don't know if you've had the same experience.
Yeah.
Man.
You can't fight. Anything you fight is going to persist, you know, fight. But yeah, it's a trance. I've been in it, you know. In the last suicide attempt, if my wife wasn't there to intervene, I wouldn't be here.
Oh, wow.
You know? But like you said, the voices get loud. They get really loud. And when you're in physical pain and you're in mental pain and you feel hopeless, you know, we really do believe that we're doing everybody a favor. You know, I really believe that I was doing everybody a favor, because I was I was so sick of listening to myself. Yeah. And then, you know, and then there's all that pain. I just didn't want to be in pain anymore, you know? And, but getting on the other side of it, like you said, and getting curious about where it's at, getting honest, you know, and learning the truth about myself. And you're right. It just dissipates, you know? And I've had moments since then where the thought will come up, but I recognize it as a thought and let it pass. You know, I don't get stuck. I don't go down the rabbit hole with it, you know? And that's something I've learned in my practice, is that, you know, just to be the observer. Comes up. Oh, there's that. Oh, there's that, you know, and not to get on the freeway with those thoughts, start running around in traffic.
No, that's part of it is what you're talking about is not feeding it, right?
Right.
When you feed it, it's going to get bigger. You know, there's a something that's called through Native American practices called the Watiko energy. And it'd be like their description of like the devil, right? But they call it a mind virus. And you know, that is pretty interesting the way they had described it as this whole thing that it's a virus that once it's entered, you know, then it's entered into the system.
Right.
Right. And we're technically these are organic computers. That's how we operate.
Right.
And if there are viruses going through, right. But you know, what's supporting, you know, that virus, you know, if you have all these other things going around, like what are you feeding? What are you watching on TV?
Right.
You know what I mean? So there is a part of it that's actually, you have to be careful with what you're feeding your mind and what other viruses you're letting and allowing into your system. And so this is part of mental hygiene, right? And recognizing that we are programmed. You know, we can unprogram things and we can live and choose the lives we want if we want to change.
Right. Yeah.
That's the hard part, is wanting to change.
Right. And it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing that needs to change is everything. Right.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And but it's possible, it's possible. And, I think, I limit a lot of the stuff that I, look at. I remember talking to my peer support team again. I think it was LA City where the guys got burned
at,
when the
Skid Row.
Yeah.
That Boyd incident.
Yep.
Cool.
And it was showing up on everyone's feed.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Without a doubt.
And I remember like writing something to our, that we put out as a peer support team that said, hey man, like you don't need to be looking at that as many times as it's showing up. And what brought that to me was that my son, came to me, one of my older sons, and said, Dad, I don't want you to go to work today. And I'm like, and he's never said that. I said, why? He said, it was popping up on his feed. You know what I mean? He's like, I don't want you to die today. And I was like, wow, it really struck me. And then I couldn't, and I was really conscious of, what I was looking at. And it just, it made me think like, we don't every year we do RT30 or 130, the training for the wildland stuff. And they play that video of the guys, in Arizona and all the radio traffic and stuff. It's like, I walked out a couple times. I walked out. I'm like, we don't need to be listening to this every year. You know what I mean? We have to deal with enough. And I understand there's a part of it that for training, but it's like, okay, like how much of this stuff are we pumping into our
for
viruses?
Sure. Yeah, your subconscious.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy about Granite Mountain Hotshots is that, so at that time I was a wildland firefighter. And so I was doing, interviewing, going to different places for different crews. And I had an interview with Granite Mountain Hotshots that year.
Really?
And I chose not to go, and I chose to go to Washington State instead. And that was,
wow.
That was 2012, I think. And that was my spiritual awakening that I had that year, because I didn't go to Granite Mountain. I could have gotten hired by them and been on that crew, and then when I went to Washington State, I had two friends on that crew who died in a car accident. And so we were in Washington State, like when you're in the middle of the forest, you have nothing else to do except shoot shotguns and drink beer.
Right.
And I did the same thing with them the night before they got in a car accident. It was just me and those two guys. I could have been in that car with them the next day, but I wasn't. So I had this huge upheaval of recognizing my purpose that year.
Yeah.
And that's what trickled me down to different books, and like I just opened me up, But that's a crazy story. When you brought that up, I totally forgot that I had an interview with them, and I recognized that later down the road. But I totally get what you're saying, man. You can't just be careful and be conscious of what you're putting into your mind. And the thing that one of my friends had told me is like, he's like, dude, look at the internet. And he's a veteran. He's a ex-Navy SEAL. And he was saying like, dude, like look at you're seeing all these posts on suicide and stuff. That's actually putting a virus into their mind. Cause now it's coming up in everyone's head that we are designed to commit suicide now, and that was a pretty interesting perspective that he mentioned to me. Yeah. And I was like, damn, that's pretty, it's a pretty good perspective,
Yeah. Yeah. You're putting it out there into the world, that's why I think what you do is important. I think what we need to put the opposite out there, life, love, empathy, compassion, you just douse people's shame with empathy. That's what's worked for me, starting with myself, because we can combat this, man. Yeah. Like you said, the paradigm it's swinging the other way now, and people are searching. They don't know, but they're searching. Their souls are searching. Their bodies are searching. And they know when they hear the truth, So
yeah, you feel it, man. When I have someone like coming up to speak, I can feel it. You know what I mean? Yeah. When it's coming deep from their soul, and they're speaking the truth. I just know it, you know, there's nothing else I have to do. And I know when someone's speaking a bunch of bullshit,
Right.
man, and I can't stand for that.
Right.
But that's just a recognition in myself,
Sure.
and I have to also just stick to my own truth,
Yeah.
because truth is relative in a way, you know what I mean?
Well, the truth has a certain ring to it. Our ancestors know.
Yeah. Someone had asked me, like, how do you know what truth is? And I came up with this concept, like, if you see a car driving in front of you and they have a donut tire, it's just not running true.
Yeah.
That's just something that's out of balance.
Right.
It's not necessarily that it's good or bad.
Yeah.
It just means you replace it with a different one, and now it's running true. Okay, now you know that you're in balance.
Right.
It's not necessarily, it's just running true. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I love that. I like what I learned of Vipassana is anicca, or the laws of impermanence. Everything is like the moments right now, our cells right now, coming and going, coming and going, coming and going, right? And what I like is the breath. The breath connects me to you and us to the earth.
Right.
And that's the laws of nature.
Right.
That's truth.
Right.
But I like that one too. I'm going to use that one. There's,
It rings true.
that's it. You just know.
It's kind of interesting too. What was I going to say? I think I lost my train of thought, man. Oh, like you're doing the same thing at work. If you're working in this firefighter job, you're seeing all this stuff, right?
Right.
And you're recognizing the truth in everything as you're, replacing the rotary saw with a blade that doesn't run true anymore. It's
Right.
like you can take some of these laws with yourself, because you can't change mechanics, right?
Right.
It's operating off universal natural law and physics. And so those are the truths we can rely upon, and we can put our trust into the greater universal laws, because we cannot change those.
Right.
We have to operate within them. But if you don't know universal law and natural order, you're going to fall into an out of balance state.
Yeah.
And so we can go into that, and then learning the power of the breath, the inhale and the exhale. It's the contraction and the expansion of life.
Right.
It happens in every single way. It's these laws that keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
So you have Axel here.
Yeah, he's here. If you can't hear him, yeah, he's just hanging out. Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about was addiction.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to close on this, because I know addiction it's a hard subject, man. And I know I've been, I was an alcoholic for a long time. I didn't realize I was an alcoholic till I had to stop drinking.
Yep.
And my head injury is what got me to stop drinking alcohol. But I think addiction, it comes up in so many different ways, right?
Sure.
We're gonna try to run away and disassociate in some way or form. Looking at your phone constantly is an addiction.
Yes.
So I definitely love to hear your perspective on it, and just if you want to share your personal experience.
Yeah. So, I learned these dissociative behaviors as a kid, and it was sugar was my first one. I remember it, it's to steal candy,
Yeah.
right? Cigarettes, nicotine, then alcohol, and then weed, and then, psychedelics, and then cocaine, meth, and I was able to and I'll say this, for me, it's all stemmed from trauma, right? It's all this trauma that I was going through that, Axel, come here. I was never comfortable in my own skin, right? And then I found sugar and I put that in my body, and it made me feel a certain way. And then, I was sexually abused as a kid too. So porn, like I knew when I was looking at 6 years old, when I was looking at Penthouse magazines, that it made me feel good. Like, and I wasn't thinking about what was going on at home, right? That stuff was too painful. And I learned all these behaviors at a young age, and it all stemmed from the trauma, right? So, I got away from them for many years. And then when things started getting hard again, it's just, alcohol's in the culture, and I'm not here to call anybody out, but, there's other things that people are doing, right?
Yeah.
That, that are more than alcohol. And some of those things are, when you say addiction, you become physically addicted to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's essentially what happened to me. And I was killing myself. It was suicide on layaway,
Yeah.
I think that the biggest thing I learned through my own recovery when it comes to addiction is that the opposite of that is connection. And so when I, first of all, set it all down and then connected myself to other people who were connected to source, that's where I healed. I needed these folks to show me, because they were all synced up to something that was keeping them sober. And they showed me a way. They showed me a plan. And I, for the first time in my life, I took suggestion and I took direction from other people. And it was the connection with those folks and getting honest and getting vulnerable that keeps me sober to this day. But what they really did was they showed me how to connect with a higher power that I call God. And the truth is, dude, if I really publicly haven't said exactly some of the things that I was doing, but it got bad, man. I'll just say that. In some certain spaces, I'll talk about it, but I'm a miracle, dude. And what it comes down to is that these people, they showed me a different way, and they connected me to God, and all the stuff that we've talked about are the basis and the reason why I was doing it was to stay sober to begin with. And it worked, man. Like, I don't know how. I don't need to know how. I just know that if I follow spiritual principles and I just try to be the best version of myself and I keep doing all this inner work, I won't want to pick up a drink or a drug today. And for years, it's rung true, so I stay connected to God and my fellows, and I try to be the best version of myself, and it's working, but it's just like meditation, when you're sitting in that space and you're in the zone, and then your mind starts going and you come back to your breath. It's the same in my recovery. If I'm not doing these things every day, I get further and further away from my people. I get closer and closer to picking up, and it's just become a way of my life now. So I stay connected and stay connected to God, and I go right to source when I have something, when I have that curiosity isn't working or some of my tools aren't working. There are certain prayers that I say over and over and over that help, every time, man. Yeah. And like I said, I don't need to know how it works. I just know that it does, so does that help?
No, yeah.
Or you want the gritty?
No, that, no, that's not
I know,
not
bro.
at all. I was just really curious, because, me coming from that, my own downfall.
Yeah.
It was just, I was trying to numb the pain.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to look at the pain with my eyes of truth and the eyes of what it actually was.
Right.
And it was just deep hurt.
Yep.
That's all it was.
Yeah.
And after I gave myself the capability to do that, that's when it all changed, and I don't desire to do anything anymore because I know it's not my path.
Right.
And it wasn't serving me. It was actually making me sick, man. Right. And what's interesting about alcohol is that I was forced to quit alcohol because my brain wouldn't heal.
Right.
It was actually making the injury worse. Right. So in that aspect, like, I had to just stop cold turkey, after years of every day on my day off, I'd be drinking, and I don't know. I think over a period of time, it's just to put everything to a standstill like that. It was really hard for me.
Yeah.
And that's when the floodgates of everything came through, and it was just really rough to deal with. But I white knuckled myself through it. You know what I mean? It wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty at all.
Right.
But I think it is a part of our culture. And I think for us, we want to feel something because we become numb in through this line of work, and we go to alcohol because we want to just relax,
Yeah.
number one. And then, I think sex addictions is you want to feel something,
Right.
So that becomes other thing that comes into the play of all of it. But, yeah, man, I think I'm still working at myself each day too, and that's why each day I have to have more compassion for myself. I'm not going to just beat my head against the wall for everything. And I know that mechanism doesn't work very well.
No.
The more I was easy on myself and I gave that greater compassion, and the inner light within started to shine brighter.
Right.
But above all else, man, I think we're going to close here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anybody to reach out to you or anything like that, or if you have a program people can connect on you with or anything like that.
Yeah. I'll just end with this, we don't heal the wound heals us. But I just, fireman _ Matty on Instagram is probably the best way to get a hold of me. If you're looking for treatment, or if you're looking, for mental health, or you're looking to get involved in some of these resources that I talked about, maybe TMS, or if you want to know my experience with that, or stellate ganglion block, I have a really robust resource group of resources for different things. I just met a couple guys down in Newport Beach that they'll do sailing lessons for first responders and veterans that are struggling with PTS, and It's absolutely free. They'll take you out on the water. I just have all kinds of stuff like that from inpatient stuff to preventative stuff. So the best way to get to me is through Instagram. Just reach out and send me a DM, and I'll get back to you, and if you just want to talk or get something off your chest, or that's the best way, man.
Cool, brother.
Yeah.
Thanks, man, for coming on.
Yeah.
Like I know we briefly talked at the conference, and I just knew we had a connection, man. And there was something really, really powerful about you. And I never heard your full story or anything like that. So this conversation really opened me up to so much. And it's just an honor and just a mad respect to you and your life, and being able to get through everything you've gone through and see the light in it all and at the end of the tunnel. So thank you, brother. Really appreciate you. And then your impact.
Yeah.
It is so important. And I always tell everyone who comes on here, like you're impacting so many different people with your story and the way you're able to be open to speak. It really makes a difference, and just thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And just to close up here, Frontline Behavioral Wellness is our sponsor and our team member. So, they offer so many different ways of how you want to impact your own behavioral or mental health. And they have a hotline of which you can call. That's designated for first responders, and it's open 24/7. You can reach out to them. It's 661-877-7241. And on top of that, you can look up acerahealth.com, where they have their facility in Costa Mesa that just treats everything across the board. And they have their own peer support group team that's there. And if you want to reach out to them just to talk to someone, they'll do that for you. So thank you, everyone, for listening, and take care.